Select. All right, so welcome to our first CI/CD design review. This is pretty exciting. I was actually really looking forward for design reviews to be a little bit smaller and cozier, for us to be feeling maybe a little bit more, confident and like, like getting a little bit of the design feedback rather than just showing them the work, which I think we will have plenty of time today for, because I think I scheduled this like for 45 minutes. We will see how much we will need. I also want to say that, yeah, this is obviously for us an experimentation. Like we don't have a clear guidelines here. The main idea that I wanted us to go through is basically have few people showing some work. Will it be research? Will it be design work, visual, whatever, surveys, anything else that we can share, and just to like give each other some friendly feedback and some suggestions, and maybe exchange some of the experience between the stage groups, because I'm hearing a lot of this question, how is this done in that stage group, and I think it's just best for us if we have a platform to talk about that between ourselves. And thanks for 2 volunteers today. So we have Juan and Iain who want to show something. So I see Juan was first on the, I'm looking at the agenda document, so I see there are 2 people. So Juan, maybe I'll just give it over to you.
Sounds good. All right. So let me share my screen because I think that's what makes sense. Share screen.
I think also feel free to point us towards the parts where you feel like you need the most feedback, like, hey, I'm not sure about this.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'll do that. I think the first thing that I'm gonna do is I wanted to explain, kind of like give a little bit of context of what I'm working on, because I always feel that like we although we're on the same stage, it's not necessarily that we know everything that we're doing. Like, I mean, we're in contiguous groups, but that doesn't mean that I understand like what are the challenges in package, what are the challenges in like in like CI. Like I should, but like I'm still kind of like trying to get all that context. So like I think it's important to provide context. So I did a small thing to just explain what I'm working on. If I can move these to the top, how would I do that?
You just have to select the first slide, because now the last.
Oh no, it's kind of weird. It's I don't know. I have like 4 screens, so that's the problem. Let me just stop sharing and share the right screen. Share. It's the Slack screen. All right, so now you see it, right?
I don't see anything. You guys?
Oh, wait.
No, not yet.
I don't see anything shared, so it looks like you're not sharing the screen. We see your Slack right now.
Yeah, that's what I want you to see, actually. Yeah, wait a minute. Play. All right, now you see it, right?
Yes, we see.
What is code coverage?
Yeah.
Got it. Cool. All right. So, so some context. I'm working on adding code coverage historical measurements. So like what we want to do is like add a graph where people can go and just basically see how the code coverage has been changing on their project. Like initially it's gonna be the last 3 months, because that's kind of like there's many reasons why we pick 3 months. One of those is performance, like basically making those queries it's kind of like expensive, like performance wise. So like 3 months, it's like a reasonable time. And we also feel that it's like reasonable from a perspective of like usefulness, just to see the last 3 months, maybe like in a bi-weekly or weekly basis. But you guys probably can give me a feedback on that as well. So anyways, so what is code coverage? So code coverage is a measurement that development teams use to measure how many lines or blocks of code are executed while the automated testing is running, right? So like you have like a bunch of tests that run and execute the code, and then like basically that's kind of like a percentage of how much of the total code is being executed. So I just did like kind of like a small I don't know, like keynote animation to explain how it works. So basically the way that it works is that there's gonna be a code change. Like a developer is gonna try to merge, or like it's gonna try to push like a code change to the main repo or code base, right? So when you have a repo and a code base, you basically have like two pieces, right? You have the executable code and you have the tests. And this is like kind of like a one-on-one relationship. Like usually you have like one file of executable code, and then you have like a corresponding file of tests. So in the case of GitLab, for instance, we have like a Ruby file that like it's basically rendering UI, and we have an RSpec file that basically tests that file, right? So like what the file is doing is basically making a lot of assertions about the code that that's gonna be executed. So like, does it have this button? Does it do this when I click it? Does it do this and that when I like undo it? Whatever. There's like many things that you can test there. So basically, like let's say in this case, the person who is gonna make the code change is gonna like basically make the code change, but he or she's not gonna write like the corresponding test for that, right? Like it's just gonna be like a code change that doesn't have like a test. Something that tests the code that they just wrote. So in that particular case, like that executable code is gonna get moved into the repo, and that's gonna increase the amount of executable code, but it's gonna decrease the amount of tests, right? So like that ratio between executable code and tests is what code coverage is measuring. So basically, if new code gets added without the corresponding test, then the code coverage goes down. So in other words, what that means is that more code is being executed without tests, which can increase like more like bugs or like regressions, or like at the very least, it's not a good idea to have like code that it's not being tested, because like it means that you're not kind of like thinking holistically about like how your code might impact other areas of like the whole code base. So you don't want that. You basically always want to be like very high, or like, I mean, ideally at 100% coverage, which is kind of like absurd. Like I don't think like anyone can like reach that consistently, but you want to be pretty high, you know. That's kind of like the goal of code coverage. So sorry, I just had one more thing there. So basically kind of like what it is basically a measurement. It's like the ratio between the amount of code and the code that gets executed on the test. So for example, a code coverage of 80 means that 80% of the code is being run through the tests, and there's 20% of the code that never gets run under a test, you know? So the reason why this is important, because like maybe for a development lead, he wants to know why 20% of the code it's not getting run under the test. He wants to understand what type of changes are making like the code coverage go down, and he or she might want to understand why those changes are happening, and like how he or she can like contribute to like not like how can they contribute to like preventing like code coverage decreases, you know? So this also kind of like gets mapped to other measurements. Like they might be measuring things like the amount of bugs that they are releasing, the amount of regressions that they are releasing. So it's a very useful measurement because it allows them to understand like, are our tests good enough to like prevent bugs or regressions? Or maybe we need to improve our tests. Maybe when we have a lot of code coverage, but it's not like the right tests, or like the code is not being tested in the right way. So like it allows them to like see many angles of the quality of their code. So it's just a percentage, but it has a lot of meaning for developers. It also has a meaning for product managers, because product managers also want to see like well, usually a product manager has the job of prioritizing the roadmap, and if there are a lot of regressions and there are like a lot of bugs, they want to understand what's causing that, and they want to see like, okay, I feel the code coverage is low. I'm not confident that we're gonna ship without regressions, you know. So it's a good way for them to also plan ahead to see like, there's gonna be like future work that's gonna be like bug fixes or regression fixes. So not like it's not that straightforward, but usually like a low code coverage means like more regressions, more bugs, more stuff. So it's kind of like a proxy to understand like the amount of things that are failing. All right, so now I can share my actual screen. Share this one. All right, so what I'm doing, what I'm working on is basically this graph that I mentioned at the beginning. The first thing that I wanted to show you is like, where do we have this data nowadays? So nowadays we show this data, we surface this data to the user through the badges, right? Like, so like the projects can have badges, and like the badges are like showing things like the pipeline pass, CI best practices are passing, it's maintainable. And in this case, we have two things here. I already got some feedback on this, like something that we gotta change on this. You probably already know what I'm talking about, but like it's kind of weird that it says coverage and then like there's another coverage. That's confusing because like, what do you mean? Like there are two coverages, and yes, there are two coverages. In this case, there's one for Ruby and there's one for JavaScript. Unfortunately, the tag doesn't show that, so I think that's kind of like a something that we need to fix. So that's low hanging fruit for us to fix. But this should say like coverage Ruby, and this should say coverage JavaScript. So this is interesting because this one has like 96% of coverage. It's pretty good. The JavaScript one is very low, it's 51%. So there's like, if you're gonna use code coverage as a proxy to how likely are you gonna ship regressions or bugs, like this means that the JS is more likely to fail somewhere, right? So we have this data. What the use case that we're trying to fix is doing is trying to show this data historically, right? We want to see 3 months of like this data changing multiple times, you know, so you can see like, oh, we maybe introduced this big change of code and we want to like see why we didn't create tests for that. So so we had this issue and we start exploring based on the things that we got. So I did a lot of exploration, so I'm gonna start with the simple ones, and then I'm gonna show you the one that I arrived that I feel is kind of like the, so far is the MVC, but it's also the one that covers the most things based on the feedback. So I started with this one. Basically what you're seeing here, this lives on the repository charts. So basically in the repository charts, you have like, we have already this kind of like code language share graph. So it made sense to like basically show this graph here as well. There has been a discussion if we should perhaps show this on the CI charts. I don't know, that's I think we decided that this is a better location for this, but that's another area where I would like to get feedback. But well, I started with like this kind of like full width graph showing the coverage like across the last 6 months on a bi-weekly basis. So like August 6th, August 21st, and then like it's showing how it's kind of like changing. And then because I already told you that it's based on language, then like there's gonna be a defaulted language. In this case, is JavaScript, and then like you can just go and like change the language. So like in this case, you only get coverage for like the things that have tests. In this case, it's JavaScript and Ruby, so you will be able to change it to Ruby. That was one exploration. Another exploration was kind of like giving them that same graph with a defaulted language, but then giving them like some useful data on like this like accumulated data. So here we're showing like the overall code coverage, like number, like the 90 percentile code coverage for all the languages as well. The average week by week variance. I talked with the team about this data, and like this could be helpful, but like not super helpful. I think they're more interested in the raw data of like seeing like, okay, this is the number for August 6th, this is the number for August 21st. So I kept exploring that because I think we don't necessarily need to show that those numbers, but we could be showing something useful here. I mean, like we already do it for commits, for instance. So like we show the total amount of commits and the average per day, the authors. So I felt that there was like something there that we could surface that it's valuable for the personas interested in this feature. So I kept exploring, like in this one, I'm showing like the overall, and then I'm showing like the specific one to the language. And you can show that to JavaScript or to Ruby. And then like something else that I changed on this iteration is that like in this one, we are just showing the, like you need to change the language. In this one, we are basically showing the language stacked in the same graph. So like you see like the Ruby coverage and the JavaScript coverage on the same graph.
How many
which actually make
there? Curious.
That's a great question. I think very rarely it will be more than 6. Oh, sorry, more than 3. I think it's usually the front-end language, the back-end language, and perhaps there's something else that they're doing. Like, so if they're using like a language like Lua, for instance, which sometimes like it's glue between different things, it might show up here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't
so
like
20 or 50, not like that
yeah,
much.
no, that will never happen. Like the most likely scenario is just 1, right? So like if you go to like a repo like the runner repo, let's just Go, Go, and Go is the only language that like lives there, And if you have a front like a web project like GitLab, it will be like Ruby and JavaScript. But all these things that you're seeing here, like CSS, Vue, and HTML, you don't do tests for that. You could perhaps, but I haven't seen that. Like Vue is just kind of like a wrapper on top of JavaScript. So like your JavaScript coverage is already taking care of that. So I don't expect to see more than 3, perhaps 4, but that's a stretch, I don't think that will be a lot. But that's a great question.
I was asking that because if there will be like 20, then the color overlap won't really work. But yeah.
No, 20 wouldn't happen. You usually work in just one language, and then like if your project is very complex, you might have 2 or 3 languages kind of like wrapping themselves around. But like that, I think that's probably a stretch.
I wonder how that works with monorepos, because monorepos can get insanely huge with a wide variety of code languages used.
That's true, but I think it will still be just a couple of languages, right? I mean, like you're right, perhaps. I don't think you can do code coverage on monorepos, but I'm gonna take a note of that, because I think one of the reasons why people are like don't like monorepos is that you cannot do like this, you cannot measure these type of things. But I'm gonna take a note of that and ask.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? With monorepos, some of the companies or big clients that we have are they cannot do differently than a monorepo, so they're kind of bound to it.
That's true. I'm gonna ask that.
One thing I'll point out, though, if we do go this route of multiple graphs on kind of stacked together, prior to you starting probably 6 months ago, we did kind of a color audit for accessibility. And one of the things that came up was layering charts over the top of each other. And Annabelle was in a situation where she had to put multiple line charts on top of each other like this, and it was a full-on nightmare. So it might be worth going back and looking at those issues to see the difficulties that arise in trying to put multiple charts on top of each other and then still being able to meet accessibility.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
I have a little bit of what could be a silly question, Juan. When I'm looking at the chart, the yellow section is the JavaScript test coverage, correct?
Right.
So in this graph, the purple section just above it, does that represent how much more test coverage Ruby has than JavaScript? Or does Ruby only have 4% more coverage in total?
No, that's not a silly question at all. I think that should be more clear on the graph. So yes, it's basically the first thing that you said. Like, so like in this particular case, like let's say like if we sit here in the first 6, JavaScript has like 64%, and Ruby has like 80%. So the reason why they are like stuck here is not because they really have like a meaningful relationship. Like the only meaningful relationship that they have is that both of them want to be at 100%. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's that will be kind of like the case when like the ideal scenario is that you want to see just kind of like a block, for both. If that's the case, that I don't think that will ever happen, that's kind of like an edge case, because then you'll have like you'll have two stack graphs that are at the same level. We will have to like perhaps address that somehow. But like the more that you guys talk about it, the more that it happens that I'm kind of like rethinking the fact that this should be like stacked,
Yeah. Also, I'm curious, if a person would want to see like the results for like August 5, it's pretty tough to do that, right? Because there is no zooming in, zooming out, no date range component, nothing. So in that graph that you are showing, there are like date points each. I think every week you show.
Yeah, bi-weekly.
Yeah, if I'm the user I want to see on that particular day, maybe that's not realistic use case here. I'm curious, how would you do that?
Yeah, I'm just gonna jump to like the last iterations, which are let me just jump to the last one. Yeah, go. Yeah.
Maybe not silly, but so I wonder if we're looking at the chart that has the total test coverage, I'm wondering if users would find it valuable if, say, would you mind zooming in on the graph?
For sure.
So on August 6th, I wonder, when I first read it, I thought that there was 80% total test coverage, and then tried to break down that there was 8% coverage over Ruby and then 64% of JavaScript. I'm wondering if they'd like to see total test coverage, if they're viewing the all section, and then the percentage
got it.
Is then so, like 30% of it, so it reflects the graph above it too. So there's kind of that connection.
That's a great question. So we talk about these, and apparently they don't care about like the overall coverage of the project. I mean, like, it sounds weird because I thought that was something that they wanted to know, but apparently that's not like a use case. They only care about like individual code coverage. So like they care about like Ruby coverage and JavaScript coverage, that they don't care like that the overall coverage of the repo. It's kind of like not a meaningful measurement for them. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So I just jumped to this one because like this is just like one iteration before like the final one that I arrived to. So there's one thing, like, so first of all, to answer to Nadia. So what we decided is that for the MVC, you will be able to download the raw data. So we have this button, and what that's gonna give you is gonna give you like a comma separated value file that you can open on like Excel or whatever, and it's gonna give you like a day-by-day code coverage change. So it's gonna give you very raw data, and this already kind of like this is already what they do. I know that Elliot is doing this. He's kind of like he has a script that basically downloads the code coverage, and then like he basically computes the values that he needs out of that. Yeah. So we talk about this, and this seems to be like a useful solution for the MVC.
You know,
I think
sorry for interrupting, but I think I have the data in the past, like with my previous company, we worked on the dashboards a lot, and it sounds like users are never, well, very rarely happy with the filtering capabilities that software provides, especially like kind of like corporate software. And I feel like people often have a preference to be able to download raw data with CSV and then be filtering it within using like XLS or something. So I think it's a good MVC.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think that's and CSV is it's something that you can use, like you can like create like Python scripts to manipulate it, or you can like use like Excel or Google spreadsheets. So I think it's a very dynamic format to just export data. So I think that will be that's what we're gonna do to like cover that. Like down the line, I think we want to explore like maybe adding a table, or maybe adding like some way to like change the data on the actual view. Basically, what happened in this iteration is that we talk about it, and I think this data, it's not really that useful. I think they're more interested in seeing like the change of the code coverage through time. So what we decided was, oh, by the way, there's something that I added here is kind of like this health bar. So if you hover over this, I don't have the mock for this, but if you hover over this, it will kind of like say like code coverage health. And that's basically like mapping back to these colors that you see in the badges. I don't know how they are determining these colors, but I thought that was kind of like a nice thing to at least show like, it seems that your code coverage is healthy, you know, like maybe it's not, but like at least kind of like give them that idea of how healthy it is. This is totally subjective, so I'm still not sure if I will show that, but like I thought it was a nice addition. So the last iteration that we arrived to is basically this one. So like no data to show there. Both graphs are stacked, and then you can download the raw data, and then you have like a full width graph where you see everything, right? Based on the feedback that you guys just gave me, I'm now rethinking a little bit the fact that this should be stacked for two reasons. One's like mono repos. I don't know how that's gonna behave with mono repos, as Dimitri suggested. That's something that I need to figure out. The other thing is the accessibility issue that Mike suggested, that there might be like an accessibility issue with stacked graphs.
I'm making comments, by the way, in the agenda. Sorry, Mike, for interrupting.
I'm still trying to find that. I'm trying to balance listening, but maybe I'll get with Annabelle after this. I know she's the one that worked on it. I'm struggling to find that issue, but it is fantastic. It is a great walkthrough.
I'll probably ping her after this, so I can get her thoughts on these. Worst case scenario, I think I will just go back to, it will be like this, like exactly what we have here with the download raw data and everything, but it will be basically the first version that I did. So I think I was like kind of like already onto something with this one. You will just need to change between like languages, and we will default to one. I don't know what heuristics we will use to default. Perhaps the one that has the greatest share is the one that gets defaulted. I don't know, that's something else to determine. But perhaps that's another solution that doesn't conflict with, that doesn't generate conflicts with accessibility. And like, it might be the case that I want to find out about the monorepo thing, but yeah, it might be another case. Like if we actually have like a lot of languages to show here, this will be the right solution.
So I have two remaining questions after
sure.
for this issue. I don't know if you have any points to. I didn't want to cut you off. If you want to complete your story, please do so.
No, I think I'm good. I'm more open to questions and feedback now.
So one of the questions I had is, so my assumption here is based on the graph you've displayed, that there is there's the need to see over time how coverage is done, right?
Yeah, that's pretty much what they want. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was wondering, like, is there also a need to just know about what the current coverage is per language, if that is like a separate or because if that's the case, another graph could be a possibility for just that specific need of understanding the current need or the current coverage. And my last question kind of ties into that because, this is a specific spot where you could put such a graph, but I know in the past that there have been discussions on this specific page on charts that there was the discussion of like, hey, can we get rid of this page completely and put these graphs into specific places inside of our application where they are, within context, instead of like this summary of different data points gravelled together, basically. So I was wondering if that has been part of the discussion.
It has been, actually. That's a great question. First, I think you're on point with those comments. So let me first address the first part of the question, like understanding the current coverage. I definitely think that that's part of this, but they already get that from the batch. Like they already kind of like, if you really want to see like what's the current coverage of the repo, like the batch shows you that. So I think like perhaps what's missing here is just like a tally that shows you like current coverage, like just another kind of like value somewhere here, which I think that's low hanging fruit. We should definitely do that. I think that's something valuable to show. So not an issue. I'll definitely do that. The second thing that you mentioned, yes, actually, Nadia kind of like suggested, so like she gave me like feedback on this issue, and this kind of like spin off like another discussion about like these pages. I think everyone acknowledges, first, these pages are not pretty. Second, they are kind of like hidden discoverability wise. Is like, oh, I need to go to charts and like find the charts, and like then like that's where I get data, you know, like they are not useful if you're really not seeing this in the right context. So I think you're 100% on point with that. I think there's basically another parallel discussion on how like we should change these pages. And it's part of the discussion. I don't know how that's going to evolve, but yes, we're talking about it. And James, my PM, he opened an issue where he's basically gathering feedback about that. So might happen. I don't know. I think for the MVC, maybe this will land here, but I think midterm, we might do what you just said. We unbundle this page and then like charts go to other places.
Yeah, I think this is a good point as well. Yeah, because I actually started like I see that there are different charts in different parts of the navigation, like charts dedicated to each of the separate like stages themselves, and not necessarily.
Right.
So yeah, that may be a good one.
Yeah, it's kind of leftover of the navigation change back then, and I know that we didn't know really well what to do, and it was like, all right, this will be decision for later, but perhaps, you know, this year or next year will be finally the year that we do something like that.
No, I really like that idea. I think unbundling the charts and like making them more contextual to where they need to be makes way more sense. Because quite honestly, I don't think like customers, unless the customer has like a very, very specific reason to go to this thing, like perhaps like people who need code coverage do, then they will never find out about this, you know? So, and it's kind of hard to like hunt for them, you know? So there's charts in repository, like if you go to any, like let's say you go here, you have like charts in the repository, like you have these charts, and then like that's one page with charts. But if you go to CI/CD, you also have charts. So we even have that thought about like where this chart should go. You know, should it go in the repo or should it go here? You know, so. Oh, by the way, this one is stacked. So I don't know, Mike, like who like that's an interesting thing to maybe like also see, because maybe this one also has the issue.
I did find the issue, and apologies to Annabelle. It was not Annabelle, it was Amelia.
Okay.
I linked it in the chat, the link to the issue, and there was also a presentation done on it when we used to do the group design feedback. So that one might be worth watching. I think it's on GitLab Unfiltered.
Got it.
I think we post all those there, but the link to the issue is there in the chat.
All right. No, that's awesome. Thanks for that. I'll definitely check that. All right. Anything else?
I did have one thought on the health bar.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Let me go back to the somewhere.
So just a thought, and this probably definitely is not MVC, but you know, like the red to green is sometimes your organizational goals may not necessarily align with that, and sometimes it's frustrating when you see something red when you're like, yeah, we're at this point in the thing, so something's red and it seems like a problem. So what I was suggesting is maybe a future enhancement could be setting a goal, right? The goal is always 100%, but it's never really 100%, right? Like, here's the acceptable line of code coverage that we're willing to have. So if you could define that, and then maybe have a line across the chart.
That's awesome feedback, and I think it actually ties back to another issue that I'm working on, which is eventually what we're gonna have is something. We're gonna have the ability to block MRs based on like initially it's gonna be code quality, but it can happen to be that it's also based on code coverage. So the way that it's gonna work is that you set like a threshold, and then like you say like, you know, like code coverage can never go below 60%, you know? And if it goes below 60%, then you cannot merge. So that basically means like, or you either write a test or like you cannot merge, you know? Like that's kind of like the type of features that we want to add. So we're gonna start with code quality, but basically tying this back to what you said, like in that case, it will be very meaningful to just show the line. This is the threshold, right? Like you can, this is where we want to stay at least, right? And I don't know, like right now, how will we feed the data to that, because we don't have anywhere to capture that. But it makes a lot of sense what you're saying. I think that's definitely the future of this.
Cool.
Thanks. All right. Anything else?
Sounds like it. Thanks everyone for being so active. Ian, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I don't have enough time, but if not, we can also discuss that back in the other. And actually, I specifically didn't want to stop this conversation because I love this. And maybe in the future, we have to just dedicate a meeting per one case so we don't feel rushed. But yeah, thanks so much for comments. Yeah, I moved all of the comments and I made the notes in the doc. So
thanks, Nadia. And I apologize if I like run over. Maybe I should have like
it's
being like a little bit more.
And I love this because if like it's too short, then it's not really useful. But yeah, Ian, go ahead. And if you will need more time, we can also come back to the discussion next time as well.
For sure. I can jump in and give an overview of what we're working on, and then I have it set up in the design tab of an issue. So if you have more feedback, we can also dive in from there. I suppose I should share my screen too. So what we've been working on is, and what I want to share with you is, we're going through the solution validation phase of kind of a big design initiative. We did the problem validation with testing the assumption that if we included more robust project and pipeline and CI/CD data with packages, we would better enable our users to kind of do what they need to do. Problem validation is done. We did a ton of research on it, found out everyone is very excited about the idea. And so what we're doing now is I put together kind of a big design that has a lot of different features on it. And we're going to go back to our users and find out, you know, does it make sense? Is this data valuable? As well as get information on where their priorities are. So for context, this is the current state of a package. This is an NPM package. You have a name, a version, when it was created, when it was updated, which is almost always identical. And then some basic instructions on how to set it up. And then because it's an NPM, there's just the one file. We are really fortunate, even if it seems a little bare bones, package is a set it and forget it feature. So as long as we can store a package and then get it, you know, allow for it to be pulled, we're succeeding. So we're already at that stage, which looks kind of great. We want to move into the next step, and I would love to get feedback, maybe not on the MVC nature of it, because it's not MVC at all, but around, you know, if the data makes sense, if it lines up with other patterns in GitLab, stuff like that. I'd really appreciate your expertise. So can everyone see the updated design now?
Yes.
Take your silence. Awesome. Perfect. So we wanted to create a page that was a little bit more of a home base for packages and gave a lot more information. The information we're sharing and showing is based on the research that we did. So we know at some level that it is important. What I want to test for in the solution validation is, are we picking the right things? Are we displaying it in the right way and at the right time? I can just kind of walk through it. We kind of followed a pretty similar template to a lot of the different pages in GitLab. So we have a nice like image, a header, that's the package name. We added this verified idea, which would require a whole MR for an issue for itself, but it's basically the idea that I, a DevOps manager, can tell my company, yes, use this package, it's the safe version. We wanted to quickly direct them back to the project that built this package. In a lot of cases, for microservices, this tends to be the project it's already in. But for mono repos, it could be coming from very different projects or be hosted very different places, so it's kind of important. We list out the different versions of this package. Currently, we just display each version of a package as its own unique thing, and that doesn't match the way that users think about it. They think that this is the golden package and it has 23 other versions of it, as opposed to there are 23 different packages. They also have a unique identifier. So this could be latest or master. And then what branch it came from is also pretty relevant. Several organizations only use packages that are built off of a master branch, which means it got successfully merged and went through all of its tests. So we wanted to surface that pretty quickly. And these are the different tags this package has. We added the instructions in this add to project. Right now, we just kind of give you the NPM snippet where you could copy it, put it in your terminal, and away you go. There's other options that we're exploring around creating a merge request that automatically adds it to the package.json, and it has a pipeline that builds it. So this can expand in future. If I'm going too fast, I'm really sorry. I just want to make sure I get through this. We added an alert for some basic testing of the package. So this is an example. If a package gets built through the pipeline and ends up in the registry that is 0 kilobytes, it's a really big sign that something's wrong with the package. They inherently shouldn't. They should consume some space. So giving some errors. We used the tabs to highlight different aspects of the package. So the list of versions is on its own home and has the ability to kind of expand and contract as it needs. Same with the files. Giving it its own place means that you can kind of do the full file experience like we have in the repository level. And then dependency and logs is the same thing. The description is just a piece of metadata, so we just surface it up. This is the thing that users are most excited about, is they would like to know what commit and what pipeline built this package. Usually when they're coming to the package UI, it is purely because there is a problem and they're troubleshooting. And these are the first pieces of information that users go for. They constantly report that they need the commit SHA that ended up building the package. And we discovered that was what they were using to find out what pipeline did it come from, what branch was it on, what commit, etc. So we just kind of surfaced that data. We did some usage statistics. This chart is very ugly, so I fully accept that one. I'm going to be working on that before we do testing. And then we added the ability to copy some of the metadata. So for example, Maven, in order to install it, you have to have both the package name, its registry, and its group ID, all as 3 separate things. So we're trying to provide that in a pretty easy to get way. So we added this little copy function. I think that's the fastest I've ever gone through this design. The big things I'm looking for is like any like glaring UX issues. I obviously want to resolve that before we put it in front of anyone. And then in terms of just kind of GitLabiness, I'd really like to make sure that this page feels natural. So if there's anything that seems out of sync with the other parts of GitLab, I'd love to hear that too.
Can you explain the 4 tags, and then there were also tags to the right of that? How those are those related? Are those tags, or are they?
Yes, that's a good call, because I say 4 and then show 2. Actually, so there are 4 tagged versions of this package, and one could be latest, one could be canary, one could be beta, and then one could be in development. Those are 4 different packages. This package has the latest and master tag on it.
Yeah.
So
I think there's a bit of a collision there of namespace, right? Like tags and tags.
I totally, yeah. Would you call it a tagged version? Would that be enough of a differentiator, do you think? I can explore it. I don't want to force you into solutioning. Sorry.
Yeah.
That's a good call out. I'll look at that.
And then I don't know. I haven't been here long enough to know, but the verified, which I think is fantastic, but that seems big. It seems tall. I don't know if that's a real thing or not. It seems taller than our normal badges are. I don't know.
Yeah, I use the large tag. Okay. I'm still getting used to pajamas for sure. So I think if they were capital letters, then it would kind of feel right, but because it's not, it's a little different. But
yeah, maybe I've just never used the large one before, which is entirely possible.
For sure. Yeah, I kind of want to shrink it down anyway, because it does kind of dominate the top of the page a little bit. And I wanted to, but maybe I went overboard.
Regarding the tags, I think it needs to be called tags, because that's, so basically the way that it works is that when the package, so you're gonna download a package, right? And then what's gonna happen is that your package manager is gonna look at the actual Git tag. So it's gonna be like 1.01 or 1.02 or like dev release, whatever you wanna call it. So I think it's called tags because it's actual Git tags, not because it's like, I might be wrong, but I think that's how it works, right?
Sometimes, so tags are used in different ways depending on the package manager, which is kind of frustrating. So for NPM, the tag is kind of like a label that's attached to the version. Latest is the default, so whatever the newest package that gets uploaded will automatically get the latest tag.
Got it, yeah.
There's another rule where if the branch is master, then it gets a master tag added to it. So sometimes there's only one package that has a master tag or a latest tag, and then in others, many packages could have them. So that's why it kind of gets confusing.
Got it. Yeah, makes sense.
Well, maybe that's a solution in there that is tags, and maybe the other things are labels, right? That's how we use them in like issues and things like that. We call them labels, not tags. So maybe we just refer to those as labels.
For sure. I will explore that. Just because tags have a special meaning and I'm not a tech person, I'm still pretty new. So I will reach out to the developers and see how they feel about differentiating these two ideas.
Did you guys explore the idea of having dependents? Because I see that you have dependencies, but I think that it's like dependence is pretty useful because it shows you what packages depend on this package. And I don't know if that's like what's part of the scope or like it just was left out.
Yeah, so part of what we're doing is we're reaching out to our users with basically a synthesized version of this is what we heard you wanted. And I'm going to gather feedback about what's important. One of those questions is around what is most important about the dependencies area? Is it knowing from a security aspect what this new package depends on? And are they all secure and safe? Or is it the other way where do you need to know how many other things depend on this one package? So that is definitely a whole area to explore. And okay. I want to for sure do that.
Cool.
Juan, did you mention dependence? Is it some kind
of? So it's usually, I like the way that I have seen it broken down is like dependencies is like this particular package like depends on like these 500 packages, right? And then like there's dependence, which is like these 100 packages depend on this particular package. So like there's two ways.
Okay.
Upstream and downstream.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Would you, just looking at the design, would you expect dependencies to house both of those ideas? Or would you expect a dependencies and a dependent tabs and separate them?
I will actually expect, I would actually expect them to be separate, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, so dependencies and dependents.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's really important to know.
By the way, I had a question on how does so this is an NPM package. How does this look for example, for a Maven package?
For sure. That's one of the big things that's been a challenge with this and why this kind of usage data is so weak. NPM packages don't have any metadata. So this would be enough to kind of operate a package. They really don't have much. Maven has a collection of 4 or 5 metadata points that have to be there to use the package. Conan has 34 pieces of metadata that has to be available. So part of what I need to do is once we get to that metadata portion and really explore it is there a pattern that all package managers follow, or is this something we custom design per package manager? Because that question is very tricky to answer.
Yeah, I was thinking also from a styling perspective, as to be able to differentiate upon first sight of this page. Am I looking at an NPM package, or am I looking at a Maven package, or any other for that matter?
So on the list view, and this didn't carry over, we actually show the package manager name and kind of logo and label to give it that differentiation. I think you are right. We should include it on this detail page. So at first glance, at a detail page, you can say this is an NPM package and not have to think about it.
Great. Yeah, that was exactly what I was thinking of.
I had one more comment. Is are you planning to maybe have like the command line, like the command to like, oh, you click that and it shows up there?
So this would expand into a little call out, and by default, it would have those commands that you would expect. And then it would also have, NPM is a bad example because you can really only install it using either a snippet or adding it to a file. Maven, there's a collection of ways to pull and install, and Conan, I think, is the same way. So that's why I kind of hid it into here, so it could adapt based on which package it was.
Got it. Yeah. So like it can be like dynamic based on like the package manager and everything.
I have a feeling though that exactly what you called out is people are going to expect at least just the code snippet to be readily available and then maybe bury the other installation options.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like, yeah, I'll at the very least I will expect to see somewhere like if this is an npm package, I will expect to see like npm install JL golden package and like the ability of copying that with a click, you know.
Would you, seeing the screen that you see, would you gravitate to this add to project to find that, or do you think it would be a mystery?
I thought that like, I mean, like, I think like I'm struggling a little bit, I will, but I almost thought that what I was gonna do was like kind of like, I don't know. I honestly was a little bit like, what is gonna do? You know, if I add to project, it's gonna like automatically add it to the project, and then it's gonna create its own like commit that's gonna add it. I don't know. That's why I thought it will. I honestly, I'm a little bit confused with that add to project, but I don't know. Like, it might be just me, you know.
Yeah, I was.
What I'm thinking of.
I was about to ask the exact same question, and I would have. Not, I mean, now that you say it, it makes a lot of sense, but I wouldn't have thought add to project. I think npm.org or whatever it is has taught us that pattern, right? We look at the upper right-hand side, like that's where npm install is. So I think that might be like an unfortunate, like that is just the pattern that again, that's specific to npm, but like that pattern has kind of like gotten ingrained in the front-end developers. So
what I've been debating about is adding the field with the copy button like we have everywhere else, and then have like a plus sign, a green plus sign next to it, so you can expand and see the additional options. But the option you would most obviously expect is within view. It's kind of my next exploration idea around that, because you're certainly not the first to have that same thought.
I just sent you one for like the registry of Composer, which is the PHP package manager, and although they don't show it like as Mike said, like on the, yeah, I think that's a pattern that we already kind of like got used to it. Like you see it also there like available right away. There's like below the title, it says Composer requires Symfony/security core. So I almost think like the pattern that we already got used to it is to see the command somewhere. You know, it's like, oh, I gotta copy that command, and like that's the way that I install it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I have a very strong feeling that as we do the solution validation, that will be one of the most common things I hear. That's my hypothesis. Any other thoughts?
Question for me, the weekly usage data graph, is this something from the pattern we're using? So do we have those graphs already? Because it looks kind of like simple.
This was me putting in a graph to demonstrate it was a graph. That is the end of the design effort there.
Okay.
We don't currently show it. So if somebody has a great example of a chart that would look good for usage data, I would love to see it. That way I can create a consistent experience.
So the charting library that we use is, because I had to figure out this for my test coverage, is eCharts, and they have a playground where you can just like basically, I'm gonna send it to you right now.
Oh, perfect, thank you.
I have a last comment on usability in terms of the tabs, because I was wondering if the little call out you created there might also be able to put inside of the tab instead of above it.
Like,
because I've noticed, that's why I like so much the change for the merge request page, where they're finally putting the tabs at the top of the page, because people are scrolling over it, just not seeing that there are actually additional tabs for them to click on. And I think that, you know, dependencies, for example, is one of the more important tabs that I would be interested in when checking out a package. So just a worry for me there as to usability of the tabs.
So most packages should end up looking like that. A majority of them won't have alerts. It's only the extreme cases that like obviously something's wrong that they'll see that. So it would be header and then immediately followed by tabs. Because I agree, I think when you bury the tabs too far, they end up getting lost. Most people can't find the design tab. They've been struggling.
Exactly.
That's a good call out though. I think one of the important things is to make sure this alert is obvious, but pretty straightforward and small, because otherwise things could get buried pretty quickly.
This has nothing to do with your design. It's more like about the, like this is like a comment for everyone in this call. But I have the feeling that our tabs are extremely subtle. That's why they sometimes are not discoverable. It's like they kind of like blend too much with the design. So like you never kind of like expect them. I don't know if it's the gray or something, but like
I totally
I always
agree.
think the tabs are disabled. I don't know why
Exactly,
I always feel
yeah.
that, but I feel like they're not
Hey,
supposed to
I
be
found
touched.
an issue, a new issue.
There's definitely that. I get that feeling too.
Who wants to address this one? Should we, you think?
Sorry, to address the tabs issue, you mean?
I mean, maybe we should submit an issue for improvement for this. Or is it a pajamas, or like, I don't know, if so many people are agreeing on this, they look like they're disabled.
Yeah, I can do that because I can immediately validate it with the last UX research from the UX scorecard. One of the insights I believe I have documented is that people are just not seeing the pipeline stat within the merge request page. And it's to some extent infuriating to see that happen time and time again.
Yay, user research. I love hearing that in conversation.
Guys, I'm so sorry. I'm having one with Christy, so I have to run.